Welcome to this wonderful webinar that is taking place this afternoon. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. On behalf of Pam Golding International, my name is Brian. I look after the sales and marketing on behalf of Pam Golding. And thanks again for joining us. It's an absolute privilege to have this partnership with Joseph Mews, which we've had for the past approximately 8 or 9 years now. And of course, we've got two great opportunities this afternoon for you guys to have a look at. Joseph Mews will share insights on the current market, as well as 2 new investment offerings at the Halcyon and the Pointe. On top of that, it doesn't happen very often. We've also got Tanzeel Sheikh from the Sekhon Group, the developers. So wonderful to have you on board with us today as well, and appreciate you being with us today. So yeah, some fantastic opportunities that Joseph Mews have on offer. Some questions, some answers will take place a bit later on, but for the moment, let me hand you over to Johnny Conran from Joseph Mews, partner with Joseph Mews in the Middle East and Africa. And Johnny, take us away, and thanks for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Brian. And yeah, thanks for everybody for joining today. We've worked together with Pam Golding for a number of years now, and it's great to be able to continually offer these webinars together, as well as events in person, which we tend to do a couple of times a year as well. So thanks, Brian, for hosting. Also, as Brian said, it's fantastic to have Tanzeel with us online today. We were with Tanzeel last week in Dubai doing a big event for a new launch, which Mark is going to run you through today. So it's it's great to have you on board today as well, and to hear directly from the developer themselves, which often isn't the case. So without further ado, I'm going to give you a little bit of an intro into who we are as a business, who Joseph Mews are, and our history for those of you that don't know us. And then Mark is going to take the lead and go over a little bit about the UK market and the opportunities that we have currently. So to go back, as I say, to our infancy, Joseph Mews was founded by the gentleman that you see on your screen now, Andy Foote, who started the business with the idea of changing the way that property investment worked from a customer service element. It was about wherever you're based in the world, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Dubai, whether you're in Hong Kong, or whether you're in the UK itself, is having a decent level of customer service for all of the parts of buying a property, from a mortgage, from lawyers, from actually renting the property and coordinating it all, but with some of the best investment options on the market. So if we go to the next slide, please. And the next one, please. If we look at what we've achieved in numbers, 36 developments sold, 3,500 units that we've actually delivered around the country, all being in the UK. Everything that we've been a part of has been in the UK. And obviously, this is a substantial track record with, 3,500 units is a lot of units that have been actually delivered, not just sold, but delivered around the UK, which is testament to obviously the partnerships that we've had and the service that we've provided. So this is a really important point for when you know who you're dealing with, to understand that you're dealing with a business that have not just sold properties, but have actually delivered various units to the tune of 36 developments around the country. Next slide, please. So when we look at our partners, obviously, it's important from our position that we work with the best, that we only want to work with partners that we know that we can trust, and that in turn we know that our investors can trust. And that's clients and partners, developers that have actually done what they said they're going to do and deliver quality property. Obviously, when you're investing off plan in particular, you want to make sure that you're dealing with a developer that has a track record, that has the funding, that has everything in place to make sure that you can rest assured as an investor to know that your property is not only going to be delivered to the standard that you were told, but also that it's going to stand the test of time, and that you're going to have that exit strategy further down the line. Excuse me. So when we look at that list, obviously a lot of them might not mean a lot to you as names, but they're all well-recognized developers and businesses in the UK that have those track records. In terms of the actual customer journey, as we call it, of actually buying a property in the UK. Obviously, there's many boxes that you need to tick in order to do so. You need to choose a lawyer, you need to work with a mortgage broker if that's the route you're going down. You need to understand how you're going to rent the property, how you're going to manage the property, especially when you're 6,000 miles away from the property itself. And so that's something that we've managed to coordinate through our history as a business and through our track record, is understanding which partners to work with. So one thing that you're fully taken care of in terms of with Joseph Mews is that when you reserve a unit with us, that you do have your hand held through all of those different parts of the purchase. You have you're introduced to the lawyers and the mortgage brokers and the rental agents. So you're never left to your own devices. You're always helped and guided through by somebody at Joseph Mews. Next slide, please. Yeah, obviously, as we go on, there is a chat box at the bottom of the screen. If you do have any pressing questions or anything that you want us to answer, we will address those at the end. So please just put them in the box there. Next slide. So we're going to look a little bit at the UK market now, the property market, and why the UK market makes sense. I think one thing to point out is that the UK market is the most invested market on the planet, more than anywhere else, more than the US, more than Germany, more than Canada. The UK is number one. And the reason that it is number one is primarily down to what you see on your screen now, is how it's performed historically. And that's one thing that you want to be able to rely on as a property, as an investment of any asset class, is your exit strategy and future proofing. And one thing that the UK has always shown us is how resilient it is. If we look at what's happened in 08, 09 with the last big recession that we had, and we look at where we are now, even if you had bought at the peak of that hike before it dipped, you'd still have made a lot of money now if you held on to the property. And that's what the UK has continually shown us, is that no matter what it goes through, and in recent years, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID, we've had inflation, we've had all of these different hurdles that have been thrown at the market. But if we look at the trend, it's still going up. And that's testament to the resilience of the UK. The reason it's able to be resilient is that it's based on the fundamental supply and demand imbalance being the big one. The fact that we don't have enough property in the UK, this problem is getting worse and worse. It's compounding each year. So what it means is typical supply and demand economics is that obviously not having that supply means, from a rental perspective, when there's 25 people, as we're told, trying to rent one property, you can obviously elevate those prices. And from an exit strategy, from the price point themselves, obviously with an undersupply, you can raise those prices. And that's why it continues to go in this direction. Next slide, please. So we've got a poll question now, so hopefully this is going to come up on your screen, and then you can vote, and we'll see the answers. And the question is, what is your biggest concern when investing in UK property? You have number 1, market prices going up and down. Number 2, managing the property from afar. Number 3, empty periods when no one rents. And lastly, finding good, reliable tenants. So if you click one of those buttons, it should, excuse me, it should come up on the screen shortly. Okay, so majority being the managing the property from afar, and then lastly, finding good, reliable tenants. Well, as I mentioned to you before, these are things that, particularly with the UK market, the actual renting and finding tenants isn't the hard part, because there is such an undersupply of property. The managing is an important part. And as I said, that's something from having delivered thousands of units over the years that we've understood. From every single area that we build in, or that we're part of building as a company, we always provide the panel of agents within that area that we know are going to do the best job, that we've tried and tested before. And those range from your big companies like your Savills and your Martin & Co, the biggest agents in the UK that we partner with, as well as your one-man bands. But we accumulate them and we direct you to them. So thank you for your answers there. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned before, looking at the future is important as well. And one thing that we talked about is the undersupply. And when we look at the top left, JLL, obviously with the biggest property consultancy in the world, tell us that over the next few years, over the next 5 years, we're going to have a 610,000 home shortfall. So we're not just talking about a small undersupply here. We're talking about over 500,000 homes deficit that we're going to see in the country. And obviously that's huge. And the fact that we're not addressing it each year means that it's compounding, it's getting worse and worse. And they say that it's going to go on for 50 years. And so obviously it's a problem as for the country in terms of obviously addressing that demand. But as an investor, obviously, for the reasons that we've just talked about, it is a positive, because void periods is something that people are always concerned about. And in the UK, these void periods tend not to exist. So it's a really big point. And then we look at the future, and we always look to the big consultants like your Savills, like JLL, Knight Frank for the future. It's important to understand that we look at the UK market generically, obviously, when we look at these graphs that we showed before. But what we do as a business is we obviously look at areas where that growth and that percentage growth and rental demand is even higher than the generic performance of the market. And that's important to understand. And Mark's going to run you through a couple of our areas that we're focusing on now, and why obviously it makes sense to us as a business to be promoting those areas based on these problems, the supply and demand imbalances, and the investment into these locations being greater than in other areas. Next slide, please. So again, we look at what the future holds, and we look at what the press are telling us at the moment. Obviously, the undersupply is a big thing that we've talked about. The bottom right, BBC is talking about the average home has 25 tenants wanting to view a property, which is just crazy, really, when you think about it. You're having 25 people wanting to view just one home, and that's why properties rent so quickly. We see the average rental time for a 1-bed in the UK is only 6 days, and a 2-bed is just less than 2 weeks. And that's generically. When you look at city centres and places of popular demand with apartments, those numbers are even lower. Where do we look for the future in terms of where the market's going? Well, other reasons that or areas that we look at are interest rates. That's something that has obviously been widely versed. It's been high in the UK over the last couple of years, with inflation being higher than expected. But it's also come down quicker than expected. And obviously with that, the interest rate is likely to come down. We've already seen it come down slightly. And the projections are that over the next 12 months, that those interest rates are going to cut further and further. And so what does that mean? Well, it's these pent-up demand obviously coming to fruition, with people wanting to invest now that interest rates are on the decline. It's also relevant for us with properties that we are offering as well, that are off plan. So you buy a property now that completes, let's say, at the end of next year or the beginning of 2026. And obviously your mortgage doesn't start until that point. So that's important, because obviously you're not going to tie yourself into an interest rate today. You're going to put yourself onto an interest rate in 12 months' time. And from all the projections from Bloomberg, Goldman Sachs, everywhere you read, everybody is in agreement that the interest rate by this time next year will be a lot lower. So that's another positive for the market. And that influx of activity is obviously what's going to see property prices go in a positive correlation, as well, as they always do when there's activity in the market. So this is good timing in that sense. Next slide, please. And again, this optimism is widely recognized in the market now. We went through a couple of years of being told that we were going to hit doom and gloom, and that, with everything going on with inflation and COVID and post-COVID sort of syndrome, is that we were going to end up seeing prices go down and a housing crisis in the UK. And that hasn't happened at all. We survived all of this turmoil. And as I say, now we're seeing in recent news that we're seeing some of the highest home sales optimism since 2022. And obviously with mortgage rates now cutting, that's obviously going to get even higher. And we tend to see a post-election bounce as well. So that's kind of all that we're seeing in the market right now, which is obviously what makes it an attractive time going forward for the housing market and as a time to invest. Next slide, please. Again, looking at the reports from Savills, from everybody else, from the media, is we want to obviously always share where we're getting our projections from. Whenever we send you information and cash flows and projections on developments and areas, they're always based on the research of the big PLCs, and so we're reliant on them, and you'll be sent that for every project that you're interested in. But I think the main point of these slides is obviously to show you that the outlook is positive finally in the UK for the next few years. It's been positive from a growth perspective over the last couple of years, even with a negativity behind the market. And now with a positive approach behind the market, we're standing in good stead for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. So tips on maximizing your return on investment from your UK property investment. If we go to the next slide, we're going to start off with a poll. And the question is, which factor is most important when you're choosing a property to invest in? Is it 1, location, 2, rental yield, 3, capital growth potential, 4, entry price, and 5, tenant demand? So again, if you just click the button there, then the results should come up. Okay. So it's neck and neck there between location and rental yield. And location is obviously tough, particularly when you're thousands of miles away, is understanding which locations are the best. You can get overwhelmed with the amount of options that you see when you look for property. And so it's our job as a business to be able to obviously provide those locations. And rental yield is another one. Again, one of the things that we focus on from an investment perspective is always the rental yield and which areas are going to achieve that higher yield. And that's really important, obviously, because the higher your yield, particularly when you're taking a mortgage, is you have the opportunity to offset your debt or the mortgage by the actual rental amount that you're getting, the rental yield. So if we go to the next slide, please. So looking at the main points that you need to address when you're looking for investment property is obviously picking the right location that we've mentioned. That's our job as a business, is to understand where it's performing better than everywhere else in the UK. It's the first point. Choosing the right off-plan development and developer is so important. The UK is a protected market, and you're safe in many regards from how you have protection in terms of build times and how quickly developers need to build. But at the same time, if you're buying an investment for your future, for your children's future, for retirement planning, you need something that's going to stand the test of time, that's going to obviously be future-proofed and give you that exit in the future. And the only way that you do that is by dealing with the right developers and developers that are going to deliver quality. And so, that's why we're so happy with our partnership with the Sekhon Group and Tanzil, who you'll hear from shortly, because we know what they've delivered. They've got a great track record that they'll talk about. And that's so important for us and obviously for you as an investor. Entry price point to rental yield, again, and that comes into the leverage of the financial tools, is the main premise of property investment when you're buying with a mortgage, which, to sort of point out, 95% of our clients do. Even if they're based in South Africa, they have no British passport. 95% of our clients all around the world take mortgages. And so the main premise with that and that structure is that your tenant, your renter, is paying off your mortgage. That is the whole premise. You put down your deposit, you take a 70% mortgage, let's say, and then that 70%, the mortgage that you've taken, is being addressed every month by the person renting your property. So to talk about my own investments and for what I care about, I have my mortgage, my rental amount comes into that account every month, and the mortgage comes out, and it leaves me about £300 every month, which is great to have as a safety blanket, and it obviously builds up and accumulates over time. But that's not the reason to invest for that cash flow. The reason to invest is the fact that I'm using somebody else's money, excuse me, the renter, to pay off that debt. And that's what we look for. And the only way that that's possible is obviously by looking in areas where that yield is higher than the average. And so we're looking at these second and third tier cities where you're looking at 6 to 7% rental yields. To put that into context, London, you're looking at about 2 to 3%. So that's why we focus on these locations. Top tier amenities, again, it's a really important point, is understanding which direction the market is going in, what do tenants demand. We've obviously seen a shift in working culture since COVID, that a lot of people are working from home, more businesses are based at home, roles are based from home a lot, or hybrid roles where you're in the office 3 days a week and you're at home 2 days a week. That's very common in the UK. And so with that, obviously our living and working culture has changed. And so bigger units with amenities are very attractive, and that's something that hasn't been necessary in the past. So that's something that we address as well. It's not just about the location and the quality, it's about building the appropriate property for the people that are in demand in that area. And so that's what Mark will talk to you about shortly with the developments we're looking at now with Sekhon, is really addressing that kind of point in the market and that shift in the market. And then obviously looking at the plan for long-term capital growth, we look at things like regeneration, transport links changing, the fact that there's jobs moving to these locations. These are all things that boost the market, and they're points that you need to look at as an investor. And those are some of the first points that we look at. What do the next 10 years look like? Is there money being pushed into this city or town? Is there institutional investment? Are there transport links changing? And where do the jobs come from? That's the other thing. Obviously, demand revolves around jobs. So you've always got to look at that. Next slide, please. So again, sort of addressing that, the high rental yield, low property price. And then obviously looking in comparison from the left of your screen to the right, you see London, bottom right, low rental yield and high property price. And then you look at these second and third tier cities, your Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, Derby. These are where the opportunities are to put down less of a deposit, less of a price on the property, but obviously a higher potential for rental yield, and obviously being able to achieve that model that we talked of offsetting your debt by the person renting the property. And so this is really important. It's important for us as a business, and it's important for you as an investor. So a lot of these locations, you'll find that we are addressing and we're providing investment opportunities in because of this reason. Next slide, please. So if we look at where is performing best in the UK at the moment, and you saw one of these cities on the last slide, Leeds, in terms of its growth and its projections for the future, is standing out in the market now. We've seen JLL told us that over the last 5 years, out of the top 6 cities in the UK, Leeds has performed the best. And then we've been told by Savills that the projected growth over the next 5 years in Leeds is 20.2%, which is higher than anywhere else in the country. And so Yorkshire, which is the county which Leeds sits in, Leeds, Sheffield and Bradford, this is an area that's being widely recognised as the top performing location in the UK right now. And that is why we're here today talking about one of our developments, which Mark is going to bring you on to now. So again, these are really important things generically to point out when you're looking at investment, and this leads us on perfectly to investing in Leeds. So without further ado, apologies for my voice. I've got a bit of a bad throat, but I'm going to pass you over to Mark now, who's hopefully in a fresher voiced mode at the moment.
Thanks, Johnny. It's much appreciated. Thanks for taking us through that. It gives a lot of insight in terms of, as a business, what we're looking for and how we're obviously able to help our clients navigate this journey. So just some context, I'm the regional sales director for Joseph Mews based in Africa, so working out of South Africa, but we obviously have a number of clients that we are guiding through this process all the way from here, and we understand the intricacies quite well. But that's why it's that much more important to make sure you get it right from the first go. You learn from others' mistakes and partner with the right people to navigate through this, and essentially all that information that Johnny's just taken us through leads us to this point where we have a massive focus on a certain area, West Yorkshire, Leeds itself, in terms of the growth and the investment potential for clients. And this is obviously, these factors are the factors we're looking at to secure our wealth and be able to invest in a, first of all, economy with a stable currency in a market that's going to grow within that economy and currency. So it really adds a whole nother dimension into our investments from Africa. Leeds is an exciting prospect. If we can jump to the next slide, please. In the fact, as Johnny said, what is taking place there, and as a third tier city, when you compare it to the others in its field, it's performing incredibly well. For those of you that don't know the UK too well, Leeds is situated northeast. It's about just under an hour commute from Manchester, and sits in West Yorkshire, which is a beautiful part of the UK. Jump to the next slide, please. So what we're seeing at Leeds is obviously a lower average price point for average house prices. Now, what that also gives opportunity to is a higher room for growth, right? So it's an easier barrier to entry. You're able to afford getting into the market here, but it's not just about affordability, as Johnny rightly mentioned, about all those factors that actually fuel an investment. It's about having those all bundled together to give you the best case. But essentially, with the current growth rate that we're seeing in Leeds and the West Yorkshire region, with those entry-level price points or even average house prices, the growth is very exciting. So yeah, it's projected to have a 14.6% price growth over the next 4 years and a 24% rental growth over that same time. So when you look at your investment, you're looking at it in two parts, obviously the capital appreciation and the rental income that it's going to generate for you. The population is significant. It's home to over 855,000 people, and yeah, the third largest city in England based on its population. JLL reported that Leeds has had the highest annual price growth over the last 5 years out of all the big 6 cities in England. And Savills predicts that the property values in Leeds could increase by 20.2% between now and 2028 across the broader Yorkshire region. And that's the beautiful thing when a city becomes a hotspot, is that the surrounding areas actually benefit from that demand. Because as prices rise, some people might look elsewhere to keep within their budget, but also a lot of the times there are a few more amenities or space and a couple benefits from not living in a city centre. So that's one thing definitely to take note of. And the Leeds financial and professional sector employs approximately over 320,000 individuals, which contribute to an economic output of £20 billion. So with that in itself, knowing that those are the type of jobs that are operating within the Leeds region or West Yorkshire region, there is a demand for jobs and in turn a demand for housing. But as Johnny had also alluded to, is the type of tenant we focus on. We're not going out there to find a high demand, low cost housing where your tenants might be of a questionable security essentially. Whereas if you're focusing on a young professional who's got a good job, who's earning above average, it mitigates a lot of that risk. But with a growing economy, if we can jump to the next slide, please, as the economy grows and more jobs come to the market, you'll see that demand directly affect the housing market. We've got all the usual suspects operating in Leeds, the KPMG, Ernst & Young, PwC, Deloitte. So with these institutions operating there, very world-renowned employers that employees want to go and work for. Obviously, I'll jump into the universities currently in Leeds. There are 3 major universities, but those employers are essentially anchor employers for graduates moving out of their varsity days. One interesting fact is that the Bank of England, and I'll illustrate it to you now in a news article, only employs about 70 people in Leeds currently, but they want to increase their employment base to over 500 staff in the next 2 years. And that's mostly because of the economic output that's going to be taking place there. We've obviously got Channel 4 that has moved there. It's a huge media channel in the UK that is obviously bolstering the media industry there. So it's not just the financial sector that is benefiting, but they've got ITV Yorkshire based there, as well as Sky Bet HQ'd in Leeds. So not just focus on the financial aspect of the economy in Leeds. Next slide, please. So with focusing on an area, you want, as Johnny had mentioned in the one slide, it's what investments taking place into that city, into the region, what improvements are being made, how many jobs are coming to the market, how many homes are being built. And regeneration, it's quite a simple theory. As soon as a public area is improving and there's more demand to live there, house prices increase with that along with rentals. So Leeds is no different, and definitely one to focus on with its Leeds South Bank regeneration scheme. It's an investment worth over £500 million. It's creating over 35,000 new jobs, 8,000 new homes, looking to improve connections into the city and surrounding areas. And it's going to also come with a new city park to obviously improve public spaces. The Wellington Place Financial District, now because of the economic output currently taking place in Leeds, there's a huge focus on this. They're wanting to bring in 176,000 square feet of new office space and 6,800 square feet of retail and leisure space to the area. It's also very driven by sustainability and has a massive green focus. So Leeds is going to become one of those cities in the UK that does stand out above the rest in terms of that effort they're putting in there. And then the mass transit system. Areas that have easy commuter belts to get in and out of are always going to perform well. It makes institutions operate easier, it helps them employ the right people, and it just gives more options, and your way of life is better. And they're looking at having a huge resurgence of the transit system up north to begin from 2028, although they have already started with these commuter belts and internal links. So it is well underway as well. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier there are 3 major universities in Leeds. The graduation retention rate of the city is at about 27%. Why is this important? Well, yes, we don't do student accommodation, but however, because of the jobs on offer in Leeds, the graduate retention rate is higher. And that's keeping the average population age lower, which is always good for output in an economic sense down the line. So essentially, the more jobs that are coming on offer there, the more graduates that will stay. But as also on another point is that Leeds University, or the University of Leeds itself, employs over 4,000 academic staff. So for a tenant target market, that works perfect for the type of properties that we are bringing to the market. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, commuting in and out from the city is super important. Leeds is actually more central than one might imagine. You've got the Leeds Bradford Airport, which is only 7 miles away from the city centre. But the Leeds train station is quite a unique scenario. It's in the centre of Leeds, and within a 2-minute walk of that train station, you can get to all the major jobs. So all those institutions we were talking about earlier are literally a 2-minute walk from the train station. And this obviously allows the employee the opportunity to live further out from the city in a bigger apartment with maybe more amenities and more space to enjoy, and have an easy commute and a 2-minute walk into work in those days that they go into the office. So it is very well designed in terms of a town planning perspective, being able to get to and from the station to your jobs very easily. Next slide, please. So with this in mind, especially post-COVID, that demand to live further out of the city, enjoy more space, enjoy more countryside and amenities. Now, obviously, there was a big demand for that, and there has been a big shift of institutions calling staff back to the office. But the ONS currently did a study, as Johnny had mentioned, is that over 40% of the UK's employment base do work remotely at least 1 day a week still. And the higher you earn in your salary bracket, you'll actually spend more time at home working itself. If you can go back to the previous slide, just to show what has happened from how far people are now traveling in West Yorkshire to get into the city centre of Leeds, it has expanded since COVID. And obviously, West Yorkshire being quite a well-known destination to get into the countryside, and because of its beauty, you've got the Yorkshire Dale Hills there as well. You know, that type of lifestyle is definitely very demanding, and we've seen that heat map, so to speak, in terms of how far people are traveling to work every day expand. And that's something to keep in mind on when you are looking at next investment hotspots. So if we jump to the next slide, in this example, you can see that from the price earnings of employees, the more they earn, the chances are they're spending more time working remotely. If we can jump to the next slide, please. So let's get on to what we're here for today. The first development that we're going to speak about. So recently, we were all together in Dubai last week to launch phase 2 of the Halcyon. The Halcyon is based in Bingley, which is a 24-minute commute from the city centre of Leeds. It's sitting at the foot of the Yorkshire Dale Hills, and it is a beautiful, serene setting for this new development with the Sekhon Group. Phase 1 sold out incredibly well, and we moved on to phase 2 sooner than we actually thought, and merely because of the price point that we're bringing to the market and because of the amenities that come along with that price point. Interestingly enough, 80% of the purchases in phase 1 are all existing landlords, so they've been in the market for a while. They know what to look for. They know where value is obviously offered, and that was obviously something very pertinent in the Halcyon when we launched phase 1. Phase 2, we're looking at completion in Q4 2025. We have starting units from £165,000 essentially, and what would be required is a 20% deposit of that security deposit to exchange contracts. And then on completion, the balance would be due, that 80% balance, whether it be made up from a mortgage and a further deposit. But it helps, especially coming out of Africa or South Africa, where there are remittance of funds restrictions. You're able to manage your cash flow a lot easier with this. But the Halcyon itself, as you can see in this picture, it's set up between 2 blocks. To the right is Bingley House, which is phase 1, and is connected by a sky bridge into Beck Pavilion, which is phase 2. Obviously, separated by a beautiful stream running between the buildings. The Halcyon actually, I think it means tranquility in Latin, and it is derived from that stream that runs through there. If we can jump to the next slide, please. But the point of difference here, just to quickly illustrate the travel time between the Halcyon and Bingley to Leeds, it is 24 minutes on the overland train. To put that into perspective, if you lived in Zone 3 in London and you were working in Zone 1, that's about a 40-minute commute in itself on the underground. So this is a lot more pleasant commute and a lot quicker to get to work. You've also got Bradford, which is only 16 minutes away, which is also a hustling city centre that's doing incredibly well in the UK market, with jobs essentially as well. Can we move to the next slide, please? But the Halcyon itself, what stands it apart from anything else really in the market right now, and I can guarantee you'll be hard-pressed to find any development that offers this type of amenity at this level for this price point. But what we have done, and we'll talk about this further with Tanzil in a moment, in terms of what Sekhon Group have brought to the market, we have essentially mirrored the build-to-rent industry that Johnny spoke about. That institutional investment that are building to keep the returns for themselves and to make a point of difference. They're building bigger units, bigger or more amenities, but essentially that's never really been available to the retail investor. If we've seen the rental increase in the last 2 years in the UK of about, on average, 18 to 20% rental increases, the majority of those increases came from the build-to-rent market. So what we've done now is we've replicated this, and we've got 33 different amenity spaces. But not only that, the units in the Halcyon are on average double the size than the average one-bed units in the UK. Where you're seeing a one-bed unit in the UK between 38 and 42 square meters, our average one-bedrooms in the Halcyon are between 76 and 84 square meters. So you're getting that double the value, which is going to drive the tenant demand. Amenities. We've got a fully spec gym with a cardio room, weights room, and a yoga studio with change rooms as well, which is you seldomly see in residencies. Private dining suites to be able to host dinner parties and not have to host them in your flat if need be. Events lounges for bigger events where you can have professional caterers come in and help with that. Very uniquely, there are guest suites on offer. So if you're in a one-bedroom and you've got friends or family coming to stay the night to visit you or whatnot, you can book them into one of the guest suites and accommodate them there in their own unit, which is quite amazing and a nice added value. Games lounge, cinema room, golf simulator, outdoor cafe, 24-hour reception or concierge to manage these amenities, and most importantly, serviced office space. As we're talking about it, we've built this for what the market's demands are, and with that amount of people still in the UK working from home, giving them the opportunity to not be hunched over their kitchen counter while they're trying to achieve their day's tasks, they can have a fully serviced office space in their residency where they can work comfortably and obviously get the job done. And then we've got breakout lounges throughout the Halcyon, which is to encourage community living and build that demand. Can we please jump to the next slide? So just to give you a little bit of a better perspective of this, it's 140 units, and we just launched phase 2 here on the left. You can jump to the next slide, please. But you can see its beautiful surroundings with community spaces outside and inside. Jump to the next slide, please. Just to give you a good understanding of the size of these apartments, the ceiling heights are above average. The room sizes are above average. The furnishers and the specs are obviously tailored to that young professional market. So we are looking for quality and a higher standard. I love the CGI just illustrating the size of this bedroom as an apartment in the UK. Yeah, very much a unique offering in this. And there's the cinema, the indoor terrace cafe, private dining lounge, games room, gym, and the concierge. And just to jump onto, yeah, there's an aerial shot of the site before we started with the revamp. The building was actually completed in 2001. It was the previous headquarters for the Bank of Bradford and Bingley. They were bought up by Santander Bank and absorbed into the regional offices essentially. But yeah, the Sekhon Group eyed this little gem out and knew exactly what they could do with it, especially with what is also happening in Bingley. Bingley, the town itself, very quaint countryside town. However, they also do still need homes to come to the market for their demand. So this is helping fuel their market for that. So that's why we're able to go to the next slide, achieve gross rental yields of around 7%, which is more than above average in the UK. That's a good illustration of Bingley itself. So we jump to the next slide. And then Bingley being voted by the Yorkshire Evening Post as the #1 commuter town for Leeds. Next slide, please. And Martin & Co, one of the UK's larger rental agencies or managing agencies, giving us an appraisal on the site itself, expecting these units not to earn anything less than 7% gross yields, which is phenomenal for a UK investment where you know you're going to get a capital appreciation due to the demand and the uniqueness of the offering, and then also benefiting from the rental demand because of the uniqueness of and the extra offering that is added on top. You can jump to the next slide, please. I'm going to go through Wakefield quite quickly, so we give enough time for Tans to come on and we can answer some questions. But our other development in Wakefield is called The Pointe. Wakefield itself is a 13-minute commute to the city centre of Leeds to the south. It's got an average property price of £233,000. It's got a strong forecast of 28.2% over the next 4 years. And in terms of what's currently happening in Wakefield, if we can go to the next slide, it's got a very energetic population. The average age is 40% of the average age is below 35 years old. We've got strong employers in Wakefield as well. Haribo, Card Factory, and Team 17, a multi-billion-pound gaming software company, is based there. So there are plenty of jobs on offer there. But with that, it's got quite a diverse business sector, and that gives obviously an array of opportunities for people to go and find employment there. We can go to the next slide, please. Its regeneration itself has already taken place. Trinity Walk, a £2 million investment in retail entertainment, was completed, and Kirkgate Station had a £5.4 million upgrade, and there's another further town deal of £24.1 million allocated to new projects for retail, hotels, and offices, etc. Next slide, please. So commuting from Wakefield, as I mentioned, it's a 13-minute commute into the city centre of Leeds. You've got Sheffield only half an hour away. Bradford 43 minutes away, and Manchester only an hour away. Next slide, please. And yeah, it comes with its own culture because of its young, vibrant population. It is a place that you might not even have to commute from because of everything that is taking place there. And yeah, jump to the next slide, please. So next slide, please. We're going to look at the Pointe now. The Pointe is a 37-unit refurbishment of a building that was completed in 1897. It's a beautiful, iconic building which is getting a complete revamp. It's a Grade 2 listed building, so we need to keep it obviously intact with its former glory, which we are, or the Sekhon Group, are underway with. We've got prices starting from about £125,000 for a unit, 20% deposit. Again, looking at about a 7% gross yield. This is due to complete in Q1 2026. We can go to the next slide, please. Just to show how easily accessible it is from Wakefield, you can get to obviously Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham, London. You've got bus stops and train stations really on the doorstep there. So commuting from this particular destination or location is incredibly efficient. Next slide, please. Just to give, let's just pop through these pictures. You can see the former glory. We're going to restore it. It's getting a completely new roof. The interiors are a classic Mayfair finish. Obviously, we worked hard with the interior designers to come up with these. We'll be able to supply furniture packs along these lines as well, if that's what you choose to go with. But we are keeping it very upper market and obviously targeting that young professional. Next slide, please. And with that, we've got amenities. We've got a gym as well as a co-work lounge and office space or board meeting room there that residents will be able to enjoy. And a very unique feature of this particular development is we're selling storage with it, which is quite different when you come to the market. Being able to offer a 1-bedroom unit or 2-bedroom unit with an extra storage room is quite something. Next slide, please. So I'm going to bring on Tanzil now to join us and just answer a few questions. So as Brian had mentioned earlier, Tanzil's the head of sales and asset management at Sekhon Group, and it's an absolute pleasure to have you online with us today, Tanz. Like, it really is appreciated. We've just spent some time together in Dubai, so Tanzil's just got back from that. But yeah, welcome, Tanzil. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Mark. Yeah, pleasure to be here with you as well.
Yeah, so Tanzil, obviously the Sekhon Group comes from a long history of successful developments and other businesses essentially, but its focus on property itself seems like the biggest focus of the group currently.
Yes. I mean, throughout all of our businesses, I think property development is definitely the one that we love most. So we've been developing property for over 20 years now. We have around about 1,100 units under our own management, and that's a variety of residential accommodation, student accommodation, industrial, commercial, and office accommodation. So we've been doing this a long time, and we not only build them, we've retained them as well. So we've got a very good idea of what the rental market is, how to manage tenants. So we have an all-inclusive experience of the whole cycle of what your investors would go through from purchasing to renting out to refurbishing. You know, we've lived the pain, as they say, of what your investors have been through as well. So I think we're well placed to be delivering these two developments which you've spoken about.
Yeah, thanks. And I mean, over 1,000 apartments, that's nothing to to turn your head at. That's a huge achievement. And I mean, on the screen now, we've essentially got a CV of the Sekhon Group. I mean, out of that, what do you think stands out the most for you guys to shout out about the most?
I mean, I would go with probably the last line, which is a legacy of trust. which is exactly what it is. Mark, the two developments that you've just mentioned, the Halcyon and the Pointe, what we refer to them is they're legacy developments. They're a combination of 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears from going from our first development, where we were pretty much the rookies. We didn't really understand what we were doing. We never knew what the term watertight meant when it came to roofs. So we've kind of developed our craft. We know now which are the right contractors to use, which are the kind of materials, the quality of the product. All of those things have combined for us to come to this stage now where we can deliver high quality accommodation. So yeah, this is our legacy that we're now looking to share with investors.
Yeah, awesome. Because like we mentioned earlier, especially for international investors looking to invest in a country that they might not be very familiar with, it's choosing those partners that you want to get comfortable with. And a lot of investors don't get the opportunity to know who they're dealing with in terms of a developer. And I mean, just for you joining us today, like means so much. But what you already mentioned, the legacy being the main driver, but what will set Sekhon Group apart from other developers? I mean, is it the passion behind the areas you work in, or is there something else behind how you will locate the site and the locations you build in? Or
so I think the first thing to understand about the Sekhon Group is we've always built developments to retain them. So when you're developing your property portfolio and not selling it, you will automatically ensure the quality of that product is high, because our aim was always capital appreciation. Whichever building we bought, how we developed it, we always used high quality finishes to ensure that we maximize the capital appreciation of that development. But now that we've come to a point where we're looking to build to effectively sell, that has put us in good stead, because we've never looked at any shortcuts, but we automatically think of how to deliver the best in quality. When we choose our developments, we look at a variety of factors. So, for example, the Halcyon, it's a commutable distance to Leeds, because we're looking to attract the Leeds rental market effectively. But because it's not in the middle of Leeds city centre, we are classing that as a secondary location. So when we look at the Halcyon, we needed to ensure that if we can't be in the middle of the Leeds city centre, we need to offer something in return that will still attract the same renters who might look at a city centre development. So the things that we've done there to appease that is, like you mentioned for yourself, the size of the apartments. The smallest one bed we have in the Halcyon is over 700 square foot. We have two 3-bedroom apartments in excess of 2,000 square foot, which is unheard of in those locations. We've been able to put in world-class amenities, which again, if you look at the build-to-rent sector, we've gone above and beyond even what the investment trusts are now offering. And at the same time, we're creating a community living space, which now appeases people who want to work from home. We've seen in the news with the Labour government, they are now encouraging employers to offer a hybrid solution that involves more home working. We're looking to cater to that market, because we're giving them bigger apartments, we're giving them amenities, we're giving them spaces where they can work from home. So all of these things combined give us our development, which we believe that not only your investors will want to buy, but it will be a sound investment, not just for now, but for the next 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah. No, yeah, future-proofing is obviously the name of the game, especially in property. You don't want to hold it for much shorter than a 10, 15-year period if you ever even plan to sell it. So, yeah, 100% that is the way you got to look at it. Before I jump on to the next question, just to remind everyone that there is a Q&A box down at the bottom. If you do want to ask any questions personally, please just type your question in there and we can answer it right here. Just also when it comes to an off-plan purchase or a conversion for our clients, there often seems to be a bit of nerves about, you're paying the security deposit of 20%, but what makes it secure? Why would the Sekhon Group in these particular two developments give them more confidence of safety and that financially they're in good hands to see the completion to the end without any dramas.
So in terms of giving comfort to investors, look, we completely understand, when it's off plan, you can't see it. There's a timeline that the investor promises, and the investor is effectively tied in from day one. So they've been asked for a deposit. What would be good for your investors to know is that all of our developments, both the Pointe and the Halcyon, are 100% funded by the banks. So in effect, the banks have done their due diligence not only on the Sekhon Group, but they've also done their due diligence on the sites themselves, and they're comfortable with the GDV values and the sale prices that we are putting out. And what that effectively means is, Mark, is if we didn't sell even a single unit and we wanted to retain it ourselves, the banks are comfortable that they would effectively refinance those buildings to the GDV values of the sale prices that we're offering. That should be the biggest plus point for your investors, knowing that even financial institutions are backing us on the type of product, the quality finishes that we're delivering, but most important, the price points that they are paying. Now, the second thing is with us is, if you look at our track record, this is not our first time. We've been doing this for over 20 years. We've done similar type of developments in terms of size previously, which we've retained ourselves. That is quite key. So you're dealing with a very, very experienced outfit. We're very transparent organizations. We came to the event in Dubai. We've done Q&A sessions before. So we are very much out there to assure investors that we're not just here today, gone tomorrow. We're delivering quality products all the time. We've shared our business plan for you and the brand that we're looking to develop within this market over the next 5 years. So hoping that sits well with your investors and give them the comfort to invest.
Yeah, awesome. I got a question here from the panel. It's just asking what is your commitment to completing the development on time and the spec of quality that obviously, probably referring to the CGIs seen in our slideshow there, is what's your commitment to that finishing product?
So we always like to under promise and over deliver. So the timescales that we've given, we're more than confident of meeting those timescales. CGIs, I'm sure, Mark, as you know, we work very closely with the marketing team to ensure they get them as close as possible. I mean, we always know there's a disclaimer on everything, but we were very keen at that design stage to ensure the look and finish will match what those CGIs are. And the biggest thing for us, Mark, is we don't like to rush anything. So the design process of both the Halcyon and the Pointe have been roughly 2 years in the making, sitting down with architects, making sure we can maximize the spaces, making sure we can provide those amenities. Even when working with Joseph Mews, we've had numerous meetings, and we've taken our time sitting down with your marketing team, sitting down with the architects to make sure we can match that finish as close as possible. And the biggest thing for us is not to put a product out in the market that we know is not attainable within the price points that we're offering this at. So we're very confident that the look and feel of both the Halcyon and the Pointe is what will be delivered in reality.
Yeah, obviously I've been to both sites. I fell in love with them. First seeing them, obviously a bit rough around the edges at first, but it's the magic that's being made right now to obviously create something that's so unique, obviously in Bingley and Wakefield itself. So yeah, it's going to be awesome to see the completed products, and we've seen little glimpses of as we've started the conversions and the revamps of what's happening there. So yeah, no, very excited about that. Got a question here. So what additional costs are there over and above the 20% deposit, example, furniture and the like? So essentially, your 20% deposit is a security deposit. You'll have solicitors' fees on that to act with you in terms of going through the sales agreement and exchanging contracts. And then on completion, there will be the further 80% required to be paid. If you're going to be using a mortgage, I've seen mostly out of my region in Africa, non-residents, they're getting between 55 and 70% loans for their properties over there. You need to pay the balance on top of the deposit that you've already put in an exchange. So that's something to keep in mind. And then also, if you are using a mortgage, I think the rule of thumb is then you're looking at about 10% fees on top of the purchase price. And then with the cash purchases, obviously those fees are reduced quite heavily. But a furniture pack would be one of them, where you'd essentially see, we'll give you options, basic, medium, or luxurious furniture pack, which you'd be able to decide what price point you want to purchase a furniture pack. I would say 80% of the rental market currently in the UK are trying to apply for units with furniture. So it's a nice addition to have, and obviously you can charge a bit more. But we do run through a cash flow with you. So we work very closely with agents in these areas to work out the appraisals of this offering, the units, what the market will be prepared to rent for, and we'll work out a cash flow with you to show you how much money in. We'll give you introductions to our mortgage brokers to give you obvious direction on what type of a mortgage you can achieve and what costs would be involved there, but also projections on how the unit's going to perform, and managing agent costs and whatnot. So we do highlight all of these costs for you within the purchase, even before paying a reservation fee. But essentially, right now, I mean, we've been just very excited. We've had managing agents work with us already in the area, showing clients the site and what is to come to the market, and just because of its uniqueness, we're seeing a very excited industry about the uniqueness and the difference of these units that will be coming to these areas. So with that, yeah, we would be able to guide you through all the extra costs as well, and realistic projections, because such as Tanzil mentioned earlier, it's important to under promise and over deliver. So we'd much rather take a cautious view on those expenses and then guide you through that. Yeah, so we've gone over an hour, so I'm going to bring it to an end over here. But Tanzil, thank you so much for joining us. For Johnny joining us, and for Pam Golding obviously hosting us today. It was a huge privilege, and we will, if you'd like to, if we can jump to the next slide, I'm not sure if there is a box that allows you, if you want a one-on-one consult with us, you're more than welcome to arrange one with myself or Johnny, and we can talk you through the offerings. If you want a mortgage consult, please just tick the box on your screen right now, and we can set up a one-on-one meeting to actually go through it a little bit further with each other individually. So once you've done that, we can move along. But again, thank you to everyone for joining today. It is much appreciated, and we hope you enjoyed it.